paper straws.
Paper straws.
Paper straws. But do they suck?
I found the McDonald's $1.5 billion straw scam. I wanted to know why McDonald's switched from plastic straws to paper straws. So I wanted to know what gave them the pressure to actually switch from the old to the new. Environmental factors is the obvious answer to most people. Like, they think about it and they say, oh, they must have changed because of environmental factors. But we know they were forced by the European government and the 9-year-old that actually made a speech about 500 million straws being dumped every day. He was wrong. The kid was wrong, by the way. From the pressures from the government, the 9-year-olds and dying turtles in the ocean, they switched to paper straws. But they also got pressure from us, the public. We didn't enjoy the paper straws. Every time you drink from it, you get that paper flavored Coke and just tastes weird. They made the papers thicker, and that thicker paper actually is not recyclable. And now they just came out admitting that don't throw it in the recycle bin, just throw it in the regular bin. And now it's like a whole nother thing, because if it's not recyclable, what are we doing here? What are we doing really, McDonald's? When these paper straws were introduced, they were introduced as saviors. So here comes the Messiah to save everyone from these horrible plastic straws that are destroying our environment. But when you search deeper, actually, you find that these paper straws are way more expensive, and the production of it produces more carbon dioxide than any of these plastic straws ever did. Since McDonald's is losing $1.5 billion every year from these paper straws, I wanted to know how they are compensating for that. They gotta be using something else outside to compensate for losing so much money every year. I went back 2019 to compare the price of a large Coke to 2019's price and the large Coke of 2022's price. The price of a large Coke in 2019 compared to 2022, $3.35 and $4.55. But correlation is not always causation. Since these paper straws are doing more harm than good, let's look back at plastic. What's the history of plastic and why we keep using it even though we know the problem? Let's look back at it. Back in the 19th century, before we perfected the synthetic plastics that we use now, we used actually plastic that occurred naturally from nature, so such as rubber, tortoise shell, and horns from other animals. Back then we didn't even know there were synthetic plastics. These plastics produce piano keys, telephones, and radios. And these antiques lasted a long ass time. Since we used animals mainly to produce these plastics, these animals were getting extinct. So we needed to find out what else can we use to produce these products that used plastic only. Finally, in 1932, we perfected the plastics. This new type of plastic can be used to do anything. That's why it was called the miracle substance. So from all these wonderful inventions from plastic, it led to the worst type of plastic, PETs. When these PETs degrade, they become microplastics, which actually last longer than any plastic in the world. And now 500 billion plastic bottles are sold every year. You always hear that plastic is hard to recycle, but why? So polymers that are used to produce one bottle have different heating temperatures. So if they are different, some of them don't get heated and are not recycled. So what's next? What can we use? Who are these emerging heroes that are going to save us, that are going to be the actual messiahs of this plastic apocalypse? So aluminum cans is something that we're looking at right now, because 70% of all aluminum is actually recycled compared to only 3% of plastic. But the production of them requires so much energy, and it requires sacrifices from the earth. The same goes for metal straws, which we're looking at as like another replacement for plastic straws. But for them to be effective, you need to use them 140 times or more so that it has the same effect or better than plastic straws. But the solution has always been staring right at us, and chemistry is in the risk by looking back at what we used to do with animals, using animal horns as plastic, but this time we use them as semi-synthetic plastics.